Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 3 of Abnormal Psychology. So, you made it through the first 2 weeks, and that's actually a third of the course. So, we have 4 weeks left. And this week was a tough week because you had your response to the readings due as well as your first exam. So, that's a lot of material to cover. Congratulations on getting through that. Just a little bit about the exam. Uh, the class mean was an 81%, which is a really good mean for a first exam. Now that you know what the exams look like, how they feel when they're timed, people can plan more accordingly, how to study for it. So if you feel like you didn't do so well, you might want to study the study sheet that I hand out more closely, those terms on there, so that when you get to the exam, you won't have to spend so much time referring to those terms or looking up those terms in the textbook, but you'll be able just to able to answer the questions based on memory of those terms. Okay, but an 81% is a really good start for the mean for the first exam. Um, just to let you know a little bit about the breakdown. So 23 students took the exam. Two students scored perfectly, meaning they got 100% on the exam. Out of those 23 students, 8 students scored above a 90%, right? And 15 students scored above an 80%. So, that's close to a third of the class, a third of the people who took it. No, sorry, two-thirds of the class who took it, scoring above an 80%. And so if you are part of that group that didn't do as well this first time around, you might want to meet with me to just discuss how to study for the exam or just figure out a better strategy. If people want to post tips about studying for the exam, please, you can send them to me. I can even start a discussion section on that if people want, or if you guys have started independently, that's fine too. But I don't mind people helping each other with tips for studying. Okay, so I'll be grading the discussion, response to the readings in the next couple days. Some of you have grades by tomorrow. Some of you will have grades on Friday, but I'll be grading the next couple days. I hope people enjoyed the reading. I think it's pretty fascinating information, right? Hearing about people's stories through this clinician who is treating them. So, what I wanted, just a little bit about what I wanted you to say for the response to these questions is, so Lauren, how does dissociation play a role in Lauren's self-injury behaviors, right? So as we know Lauren's history is pretty difficult, challenging. There's trauma. So anytime Lauren becomes overwhelmed, either by her thoughts or emotions, she dissociates, meaning so dissociation serves her, right? It's a coping mechanism. She doesn't want to stay present in that here and now of being overwhelmed. Um, she dissociates, but her dissociation helps her cope with that because, she's obviously taken out of reality in the here and now and just connected from that. There's a disadvantage, but it does serve her in the sense that she doesn't have to sit with those overwhelming emotions. Um, and it also allows her to carry out self-injury behaviors, right? And self-injury behaviors, for example, was discussed in the book. Like if someone does self-injure, right, they can cut themselves, or in case Lauren, that she's swallowing these pretty sharp objects. Um, that if she should cut herself, that leads to the body's natural opioids, right, to be released. So that would have a calming effect. So when we're asking about why would people self-harm or self-injure, it's because physiologically the body, after they engage in a self-harming behavior like that, releases these opioids, and it has a calming effect. So if you're overwhelmed by life and your emotions are overwhelming you, and you engage in that, it's a way of coping. It's not a healthy way of coping, but for some people, it's at that time the best way that they can calm themselves down, right? So Lauren's able to do both, right? Dissociate and then engage in these self-injury behaviors as a way of coping. So as long as you described it that way, you're going to get kind of like the full credit. Okay. And I'm really curious as the second question in the response to the readings is about this idea of how we dissociate in everyday life, right? And I'm always interested in hearing how you see that in your own life. Um, and I think this is a really important part of the class to understand that when we look at people with symptoms, disorders, and we look at their symptoms closely, we can see that these symptoms exist on a continuum, right? So you and I, or people who don't have, let's say, dissociative identity disorder or anything, may not have prolonged episodes or severe episodes of dissociation, but we do dissociate. The human mind, human brain is capable of that in all of us, right? And so I like teaching the class that way, and it's this way, and it's like things, symptoms exist on a continuum. It's so that we can understand better, even though we don't understand fully, at least we have a better understanding of what is happening in the mind of someone who is suffering from these symptoms in a more severe level, right? And in this way, when we look at psychological disorders, we're not looking at it as like this foreign entity, this otherness. I think if we look at mental disorders that way, I think it would be more difficult for us to empathize, obviously, but also to end stigma around mental disorders, right? So if I understand dissociation on some level and I engage on dissociation on some level, then I may understand why someone else engages in dissociation on a more severe level, right? And it's not like we have control over it, right? My example of eating potato chips, I don't sit down and say, I'm going to eat this whole family size bag of potato chips. I know it's unhealthy. There are better ways to eat. And I never planned for it. But if I'm having a tough day and I'm just sitting down, streaming a show, and I'm eating, and I don't want to get up and make dinner, I might end up eating the whole bag just as I'm watching the show. And only when I get to the bottom of the bag do I realize, wow, I just finished a whole bag on my own, right? But I dissociated from that experience. It's not like I'm counting, okay, this is the 90th, this is the 108th chip. I've disconnected myself from this experience. I'm just on automatic, right? And so I want you to think of dissociation happening that way, that we don't consciously say, I'm going to dissociate, just like Lauren doesn't consciously say, I'm going to dissociate, right? She becomes overwhelmed, and that it just kind of kicks in as a coping mechanism, right? So yes, there's some similarities, but yes, dissociative identity disorder is beyond what most of us who don't experience dissociation that way. It is a more severe condition where dissociation is taken to a more severe level, right? Okay. And I did that with the fourth question too, with the BDD and having a bad hair day. And I think most of us have had days where we just don't feel good, right, about the way we look. I don't know, maybe your hair, like I said, maybe you have a pimple on your nose, or you just don't like, nothing in your closet looks good on you, and you just don't want to leave the house, but you do because you have to go to work or you have to go to school. Um, but you understand that, like, throughout the day, you might have times where just like, oh, people are looking at me because my hair's weird today, or I have this pimple, or whatever. So you're kind of obsessive about it, right? But you're able to go on and function throughout your day, pretty getting things done. But someone with BDD will also have something that maybe minor, right? But they're seeing it as something more major, right? And it's to the point where obviously it's impacting how they function. They're not able to leave their home. They are anxious about it. They are hiding from people. They don't want people to see them. They don't like sometimes even to look at themselves. And so again, we're looking at a continuum of, a low level of anxiety around it to more of a high level of anxiety and obsession over it, right? So again, trying to understand so that we can empathize, so that we can overcome stigma, right? Of this kind of idea of mental illness. People who suffer from mental illness are drastically different from us. Like their experiences are something we can't understand, which is not the way to, I think, to look at mental disorders. And when we get to the chapters, like next in the third week, you're looking at mood disorders, and then when we get to chapters on anxiety, I think that idea of understanding things existing on a continuum would be much more easy for you to comprehend, and it'll help you revisit these chapters in a different way, or these readings hopefully in a different way. Okay. So this week is a lighter week. You only have the response to the readings due. There's no exam this week. The exam will be the following week. So again, you have two secondary readings. They're long this week, so give yourself time to read through them. They're interesting, but they're long. Again, this week's focus is on psychosis, so disorders where people are definitely detached from reality, and then the chapter on mood disorders or mood problems, okay, which is I think more common in media, and then the prevalence rates for mood disorders are much higher than those of like something like psychosis, psychotic disorders. Again, if you have problems that should arise, please email me. But other than that, the schedule is pretty much the same. I'm gonna release the questions on Friday, and you'll have till Tuesday at 11 p.m. to complete the questions. And again, adhere to the deadline so that you don't miss the deadline and lose out on points. Okay. And the other thing I want to say is for those of you that did respond to people reading to response, and you commented on another peer's response, I will be looking at those this week too. And depending on what the quality of your responses, I'll be adding points to your first exam. So you might see, if you did that, you might see up to, 6% or a little bit more added to your exam. Okay, so just remember that's in the syllabus too. If you respond, by the due date to your peers' responses, then you put comments and they're thoughtful. There's a way to earn points on your exams. Okay, so I'm going to end this week's announcement right now. But again, if you have questions, feel free to get in contact with me, and we'll set up a meeting. Okay, bye for now.